Okay, so welcome to all. We are going to look over your radio readers and raps today, at least those people who feel like sharing them with us. We're also looking ahead. While I have everyone's attention at the beginning of class, I see an assignment coming up next Tuesday for September 18th. So remember, that is an important first step in the original reporting that you'll be doing for this class. So we've talked about this before, but there are a lot of things going on in your lives, so let's talk about it again. Again, this is due next Tuesday, and hopefully you've had a chance to already do some thinking about it. So I would like you to propose 2 fact-based stories that you can report on. One of these eventually is going to be a backup, and one of them you will pursue and report on in several different media forms. But right now we're looking for 2 stories. I might call them your A story and your B story, just meaning there's the one that we always think would be great, and then there's the backup. Maybe you like both your stories equally. That would be cool. So you need to write a single paragraph about each of them for now, because you haven't yet begun the reporting necessarily. And for each of these, the most important thing is that you must be able to interview somebody about the stories. And your next step after the one that we will accomplish on September 18th will be to conduct an interview and write a script based on what you learn in the interview. But for September 8th, we just want your 2 story possibilities. So one story should be about an event, the other about a profile of an interesting individual. This can be, in terms of an event, it could be something which is coming up in the next 2-3 weeks, or it might be something that has already happened, and you can write about it as though it's coming up. So, this is, we take some liberties with typical reporting practice so that we have something to write about in this class. But that's, it's got to be something with somebody who's accessible to us that we can interview, something that's happened in the, recently or will happen in the near future. And so you must be able to attend the event and interview the person that you want to write about it in the next 2 weeks or so. So if it's something that's happening in December, this is not good for us. It's got to be coming up soon. Of course, if it's an event that's happening in December, but you want to profile a person, you can call them, reach out to them in the next couple of weeks. That's okay too. The main thing is you can do an interview in the next couple of weeks, and there'll be some kind of event that you can cover. Okay, so I propose a number of questions for each type of story. So reporting on an event, first of all, find an event that will be happening within the next 3 weeks or so, or happened recently, that you can attend or that you did attend. Use the questions below to develop a proposal as to how you would cover that event as a reporter. So the basic facts of any news story are relevant here. So the who, what, when, where of the event are important, and that's easy to find out. Where would you find background information about the event? So it's always important to know something about what you're going to see. In 1 or 2 sentences, sum up what you think will happen at the event. So give us an idea of what's going to go on. This would be the equivalent, perhaps, of doing a pitch. Hey, Ron, preparing a pitch for a news editor, for instance. They say, oh, we don't have much time. I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And you say, no, I absolutely have to go to the opening of this gallery. Why? Well, what do you think is going to happen there? Well, we think that, some people are going to, stage a sit-in at the gallery because they feel that their culture is being appropriated in this art. Woo! That sounds very newsworthy. So people will go there. But maybe it's a little bit calmer, We think that this is going to be, a great event for a young artist who will, gather their community together and have a chance to show off the work. You just get on the, yep. So we are talking about the next assignment. Before we get a look at the assignment that was due for today, we're talking about the next assignment that's due for September 18th. And there are some questions here as to, just getting prepared and organized. Who should you talk to about this event? So this is leaning towards, it's very easy to go to an event and just talk to Joe Schmo who happens to be there. They don't usually know very much about it. So it makes for much more interesting reporting if you can talk to somebody who's very knowledgeable about the event. And that usually requires a little bit of forethought. Who would know a lot about this? Gallery owner, curator for the museum, local culture critic for a blog that you follow. So these would be, for instance, very informed people. They may even attend the event, but you need to think through, well, who could I talk to about this? If you've discovered the event or whatever you're reporting on through another medium, like, I don't know, they're in the Chronicle, sometimes you can even manage to get in touch with the reporter who actually wrote about it for the other media. It's like, I'm a student, could I ask you a couple of questions? They're often too busy to really talk to you, but may just put them on your list, anyway, of potential contacts. Knowledgeable people. So you will need to actually interview one of these persons in the next 2 weeks. Who will it be? Well, in the case of the opening at the, at the gallery, you're going to interview the artist for sure, and all these other people may be just additional contacts. But if your event is farmer's market, who you could interview, someone who sells at the market, someone who organizes the market, somebody who knows a lot about markets. It's a little less obvious if that's the event you want to cover, doesn't focus around a single individual. So who would be most knowledgeable about this? What is their contact information? Because you're going to have to contact them. Have they confirmed they would like to talk to you? Maybe you've already been through this. Maybe you've even talked to them on the phone and done the interview already because you're on the way to finishing, more than just this part of this, process. Terrific. Just let me know exactly where you're at right now. If you're just getting going, these are the types of things that you should find out and settle on at this point for September 18th. What is the significance of the event to your audience? Hello? You just sign in there. So we're talking about our September 18th 2 stories assignment. What is the significance of the event to your audience? Why should they care enough to read or watch your story? So here's just, it's we just want to think through why we're bothering to tell this story. So, and as I said, it doesn't have to be nationally significant news. It could be locally significant news. 6, describe what you will need to do to cover the event and write a news story about it. So, attend the gallery opening on September 23rd at Mission. Hopefully talk to the artist while they're there. If not, schedule an additional interview with the artist a little later on. Hi, friends. And of course, you may have covered this in your answers to previous questions. So those are the things to get settled on now before reporting on an event. And it's a very typical assignment for a general service reporter to have to go to some kind of event and talk to somebody there who can, give you information about it and attend the event so that your own impressions and reporting is relevant there as sort of first-hand information. So an event, it's always good to think through how you would prepare an event. And in fact, in your textbook, there's an entire subsection of a chapter devoted to reporting on events, which eventually we will crack open as we get deeper into this. So there's some good advice in there about reporting on events, some of which is here. So now your other story, remember I asked you for 2 potential stories. The other one is a profile. So it says, find an interesting person who is doing something interesting and is available to tell you about it in the next couple of weeks. So this, one of my first jobs as an intern, as a researcher for a television network, was precisely that. Our show is about interesting people doing interesting stuff. Who do you know? You know, and so then it was a question of asking everybody around me, do you know anybody doing anything interesting? And, you know, after that, they would sift through and see, well, that might be interesting in the summer. So that was it. So use the questions below to develop a proposal as to how you would profile this person for a radio feature, but going on, we'll do it in other media. So state the main idea of this profile in one sentence. Frank is a medical marijuana grower who's surprised at how difficult the business is, but is still hoping to make his fortune in it. Something like that. So in one sentence, tell us what's interesting about this person, if you can. Mary is about to finish her studies in classical guitar and is both excited by the prospect of going into the marketplace, but daunted by how tough it can be. You know? So again, a profile, they do something interesting. Where are they at? Where are they going? Who's the person profiled in the story? Let us know who they are. What makes them interesting or newsworthy? Why are you writing about this person now? So notice, you know, it's okay, so you know a musician, but what's going on for the musician right now that is, you know, makes it newsworthy or timely? You know, timeliness is often held up as one aspect of newsworthiness. What are they doing right now that is, or just about to do, that is making them interesting, that we should know about it? Now remember, they don't have to be in the event. The part A is, this could be completely different, not associated at all. They may not have an event coming up in the next couple of weeks, just as long as they are available to you. That's important. But maybe you should have an angle on why talk to them now, for instance. So what is the theme of this profile? Common themes include overcoming adversity, succeeding against the odds, coping with failure, illness, or serious problems. Feel free to develop additional themes, of course. So in broadcasting, we don't have much time to tell our stories. And you know, even if you have 5 to 10 minutes, where you have a lot of time, the challenge then becomes what kind of thread can you offer to an audience so they can keep a handle on what's going on in this longer interview. In both cases, sort of pre-packaged narratives or themes are often useful to us, you know. And so I've quoted a few of the cliches there, and we often do go for the cliches. You know, overcoming adversity is a real common one, of course, where you can, fold somebody's struggle into a more sympathetic narrative of you're doing okay, you're getting through this. So a theme means a narrative or a story, an overarching idea that helps you package the individual, unique reality that you want to report on. Okay, and no one is saying that everybody's experience has to come out as overcoming adversity. You may, throw that package, throw that theme around something that you're reporting on, and that person's facing a pretty dire situation. You know, we had a report on a cancer victim. Hopefully, it was going to be a survivor, but I mean, it's you don't have to make it all sunshine all the time, but the idea is to throw a theme around what you're reporting to make it easier for people to grasp what it is you want to talk about. And there are limitless numbers of themes, but there are some that are easier than others. So think about whether, how you can, throw a theme around what you're reporting on, this profile, this individual. Does this story have a particular location? It's probably local. Will other people such as family members, friends, colleagues, or customers be involved? Maybe if you're profiling someone who has a particularly interesting store that's kind of a startup that sells eclectic stuff, can you get in there to talk to them at a time when a customer is available also, just to get their point of view? That would be awesome, you know. Are there interesting sounds or images associated with the location of this story? So for your radio feature, I'll ask you to give a thought to nat sound. You know, we noticed that. Nat sound is some natural sound that you can gather in radio. And of course, later on, if you're going to do this for television or for the web, there would be visuals that you could capture too. So, you know, we just want you thinking about that to start. Often it's like, I know, Fran, I don't know if you've ever, have you had to go shoot like a portrait shot or something to illustrate a profile? And you know, what are your kinds of considerations that you have when you go in, when you're thinking about where to request, you know, where to shoot that? Like, let's say you had to shoot, I don't know, director of a museum or something. What would you think about when you wanted to go shoot them?
Probably outside in front of artwork.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Or if that's not possible, maybe in their museum, maybe in a lobby with several pieces, or you know, with them in focus, but with the artworks out of focus.
Cool.
Show what they do.
Great. So in all cases, you're trying to put a context around your subject which speaks to what they do, right? And you know, in terms of museums or galleries or stuff, the artwork is there, but you know, other times that you might be. I met a wonderful instructor from the culinary arts department yesterday. We were in a teaching exercise together, and you know, so it would be. I was thinking, wow, she'd be a great person for a profile as well. You know, it's like, what are your challenges in, you know, this current market where, you know, people barely have the time to come in, you know, to study culinary arts because there's so many jobs in so many places they could work and such. Anyhow, so but of course you'd want to surround them with, you know, the environment that they work in, or, you know, so think about that in terms of what's coming up. Will soon be radio. But again, you know, you can think of natural sound, that, you know, what's the sound of the kitchen, what's the sound of a busy kitchen, or the line cooks, you know, hauling stuff out and things, and hi chow. So it would be, you know, nat sound opportunities, which eventually will be visual opportunities. Describe the steps you will take to gather the information to write a story about this person. So it's just helping you to organize yourself as to, okay, what's the next thing I have to do? So this can all be put into two, you know, more or less long paragraphs, and it might all take a page eventually, I guess, and just that's what's due for September 18th. Questions? If you would like also confirmation about what I think about either your event or your profile as well, we can talk about that now. All pretty clear? Nice. Okay. So this is for the 18th. Alrighty. Hey Jody. Oh yeah, good point. Oh, you're right. Yeah, you are. Okay, we should turn it on. All right. So, got a microphone. Right. So we're going to look through. I'm going to ask for volunteers who would like to read their reader or rap script as we look over the submissions for the assignment that was due today. Would anybody like to? William, you would like to? All right. And so Jody has brought out the mic.
Oh my.
Oh. And there's a power button here somewhere, apparently. Okay, oh, it's both the mute and the power button. Seems to be on. So I'm just going to pull up your script, and you can do your best rap or reader, whichever one you'd like. And let me just pull up the script so we can take a look at it. So I had them all. Let me see here. Submissions 14. Would you like to do the rap or the reader, William?
Either one's fine.
Well, let's start with the reader.
Sure.
Shorter ones. Is this yours, William?
Yeah.
Let's make sure I opened the right file.
Yeah, that's the right one.
Alrighty. So we see right away the required formatting, all caps, fantastic. The slug, which actually isn't read on air, but gives a title to the story that would go into the news editor's lineup. The reporter, Henry Schulman, is this your alter ego?
Oh, no, that was the author of the...
Of the original.
From,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you. And then total runtime, 30 seconds. So I've been telling people you can put your own name, but
Okay.
this is not read over the air. So that's fine. William, go ahead. Read us your reader.
As reported by the San Francisco Chronicle, the Giants are now 6 in the hole with Friday's loss to the Brewers. Although the loss comes as a disappointment, Giants fans can rejoice over the energy brought by catcher Nick Hundley, who was ejected from the game after arguing the strike calls of the umpire in the 9th inning. Manager Bruce Bochy showed support for his catcher, resulting in his own ejection. The Giants will need to find that kind of fire to come away with a win in their away series with the Brewers that wraps up this weekend.
All right. Thank you, William. That was an excellent story. So, looking through it, let's see. I think I would hold the attribution to a little later in your story to save the lead for, just keep the lead for yourself.
Okay.
I think, did you think that the attribution should go up there right away to give credit where credit is due?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So that is admirable. I would put it a little lower down, just to save the lead for you. I like the Giants are now 6 in the hole with Friday's loss to the Brewers. Very conversational, very sporty, sort of sports journalism talk. I might have a couple other things to say, but what do you all think?
Sounded real.
Sounded real?
Like he was actually a reporter.
Yeah. He has the style of the sports news anchor. Yeah. Other thoughts?
I was concerned about putting in the bit about Bochy because it does add like a good 8 to 12 seconds to the read, but I also thought it was like a fun part that made the story more interesting, and so I wanted to include that.
I agree with you. I mean,
Because it does add 2 lines that I think are more than what is required for the reader.
okay. So did it go a little long, or did you
It might
time
have.
it at 30 seconds?
I tried to get it in at 30, but it might be 35 or so.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think you're probably right. But it could be read quick to make up for that. So you'd want to, spell check wouldn't do it for you. So you want to carefully reread to
Right.
avoid typos.
Yeah.
Another thing to point out is, at least in Word, I'm not sure about all word processors, but spell check doesn't work on all caps. So, yeah. So even if you tried to spell check, in this case, the spell check wouldn't pick it up because lose is actually a properly spelled word. It's just you wanted loss in there.
Yeah.
So one thing you can do is write in sentence case and then select all and change it to all caps. So at least in Word, for instance, because not everybody has Word or knows about that. So let's see, Word for Mac, I'm already challenged here. But yeah, it would be this button. You can take this, and so you could write it all in sentence case and then come back to put it all in uppercase at the time you finish. So when it's in sentence case, the spell check will actually work for you, which is good. But on people's names So manger and manager, it would pick that up, but it wouldn't pick up other stuff. So let's just see what we could get from it. Just so where is it? Boy, spelling and grammar. And so on and so forth. So names, you'd want, of course, to have it ignore names. But so manager, it picks up. That's the only thing that it would pick on giants. But of course, that's just a capitalization issue that I created myself by taking it out of all caps. So, so that's just a little advice about that we get to. Uppercase. Yeah. All right. This is interesting. I mean, it's written in a kind of an indirect fashion, which makes it it gives it almost a kind of a humorous touch, like basically resulting in his own ejection. You could also have written, manager Bruce Bochy was also thrown out of the game for arguing with the umpire on behalf of his catcher too, or something like that. So in this way, it's he showed support for his catcher, resulting in his own ejection. It creates a little bit of distance, which is kind of fun and funny. So, and I like the fact that you put that supporting detail in there too. Gives you a better sense of actually what happened.
Yeah, I tried organizing the sentence differently, but it just felt like I was putting in more words and repeating words from the previous lines, and so to minimize that, because I wanted this part to be in the piece, but I didn't want to feel like I was repeating myself, especially immediately after saying things like being ejected for arguing with the umpire. I felt like having that in this line would have been repetitive again.
Yeah.
So I just tried to kind of fit it in.
Gotcha. From the game after arguing the strike calls of the umpire. Yep. Got it. I'll leave that with you. Other thoughts for William before we move on? Okay. Fantastic. Who else would like us to take a look at stuff? Or in chat, sometimes people are proposing themselves too. Let's see. Okay. Natalia encourages you. Okay. Oh, Amanda says she had the all caps spell check issue. All right. All right. Would anyone like to share a reader or a rap with us? Let's do this one. Let me give you the microphone. Oh, thanks, Lynn.
I just talk, I don't want to do anything.
You have to hold it pretty close to your mouth, and I think it's on. Is it? It's off? Oh, okay. There you go.
On July 26, family and friends of transgender City College student Dane Fallon Gray was laid rest. Oh, I messed up with that. At the Oakland Chapel of the Chimes. Gray ended his life earlier this month. According to the Guardian's newspaper, he was supported by his friends at City College's Career Resource Center. Members of the center pulled together and raised $26,000 within 15 days for Gray's funeral and other several events dedicated to him. More than 100 people attended this event to help support Gray. I kind of did it in a rush.
Okay, but all the essentials are there for sure. Okay, so here, let's mute that. So, yeah, I think you mixed up the subject of the sentence here because you were rushing. So, family and friends of transgender City College student Dane Fallon Gray was laid to rest. So, actually, Dane Fallon Gray is the subject of was laid to rest. This sentence section you want to move down, basically, right? So I think it would be more like, City College student Dane Fallon Gray was laid to rest at the Oakland Chapel of the Chimes, attended by family and friends. Or yeah, transgender, yeah.
I tried putting my own sentence when you helped me out.
Okay, yeah, because we discussed a little bit about how to go about this. Next up, second paragraph with the attribution according to the Guardsman newspaper. That's definitely a requirement because that's where our stuff was coming from. he was supported by his friends at City College's Queer Resource Center. Members of the center pulled together and raised $26,000 within 15 days for Gray's funeral. And so, and maybe say, and several other events dedicated to him. So again, I'm not sure what the big grammatical term is or whatever, but just when you're not rushing, you know, reread it. And because you saw it as soon as you read it out loud, which is, by the way, one of the reasons we read stuff out loud here is because as soon as you do it, you're like, oh, I got a typo in there. Oh, I messed that up. So it's part of why we do it, just reading it out loud together, right? Because you wouldn't want to send that to the teleprompter and then have, you know, a talking head read that. That's the problem here in broadcasting. So I don't know if you guys kind of felt it while you were working, but often you're saying it in your mind's ear as you type it. So you know that's how you wind up working on it. I think all the facts that are in there are pertinent. Both, you know, the identity of the person we're talking about, the fact that it was a suicide, so it's, you know, a sad event. How impressive it is that, you know, community members and peers and stuff raised such a large amount of money to commemorate him, and that it was real well attended. So, comments for Chow? What did you think?
I think you covered them.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about the guardsman. When you put in the guardsman, do you have to like say the guardsman newspaper,
I think you don't have to.
or can you
Just
just
the
say
Guardsman. I
the
noticed.
guardsman?
It depends on your audience, I guess. Like if this is a radio broadcast that will go to City College students, I don't think you need it because you're making the assessment. Well, they'll know what the guardsman is. If it's, you know, to all of San Francisco, they're going to say, guardsman? Who's that? So then you'd have to, you know, the CCSF's newspaper, the guardsman. I just wanted to bring this up, and you know, this is Chow was kind enough to come into the office and work on her reader and her rap together, and so this is, you know, sort of our working document between us. And I hadn't actually, I mean, I did want to just talk it over with you, sort of. Now that you've been through this, you know, and as I was talking to Chow, I was sort of saying there is kind of a process about putting together one of these stories, whether you're using a secondary source like the guardsman, or you could think of also if this was just your reporter's notebook, you know, and you had actually gathered these facts one way or the other, which is probably more realistic as to how, you know, a working media writer would proceed. But in both cases, you know, we basically scanned through the story. You know, we had a template basically, right? We had like the, you know, the W's, like who does this happen to? What happened? You know, when did it happen? Where did it happen? And then we put the why and the how a little further down. And then we basically scanned through the source material to make sure that we had a clear idea of each of these, you know, who's involved. And then, you know, we thought through, you know, let's say who's involved would be Dane Fowlin Gray, of course, but also, you know, the people at the Queer Resource Center, his family and friends and such. So, you know, we just sort of had to figure out, well, who's the person doing the action in this story? You know, we know it's a story about Dane Fowlin Gray's funeral. Who's the, you know, basically the subject doing the action in our lead. And once we settled on that, Chow just began writing her lead, which would have some or all of these elements in it. And then after that, she kind of filled in the rest as to what are the interesting parts of the story. And I think William, you know, when you know, again, clearly the catcher being ejected is that's the story, you know. Bocce supporting was also kind of a secondary item, but that lends, you know, interest and life to the story. So that's pretty much what Chow was doing too. Once she had her lead and the essentials in place, she was just looking for what else gives, you know, interest to the story. The fact that 100 people attended was you know, it's significant. The fact that so much money was raised on behalf of the event, you know, also was kind of impressive. And so she picked out those elements and stuff. So you know, I think that's kind of a formula, but it's a working formula. And we did this, you know, the same thing when working on the wrap, right? Where Chow located the quotes that would be potential actualities, and then decided on which ones to deal with there. Is anyone inspired? Anyone else to share one with us? Oh, we got 2 hands up. All right, awesome. Well, let's go Katrina and then Fran. Okay. Okay, yours would have come in with the download down here. Would you like the reader or the wrap?
The reader.
The reader? Okay. And
I have a couple of questions about the reader, so maybe you'll be able to.
Sure, of course. Yeah. Can you read it at that distance?
Yeah, but I have it on paper, so I can talk to you.
Oh, okay, fine.
California became the first state to ban beauty products tested on animals. Last Tuesday, the state legislature passed a bill to make the sale of animal-tested cosmetics illegal within the state after 2020. According to Glamour magazine, the practice has long been a hot-button issue, but recently more brands like The Body Shop, Too Faced, and Lush Cosmetics have been vocal about taking a stand against it. The included cosmetics umbrella covers products like makeup, deodorant, shampoo, and conditioner. If Governor Jerry Brown signs an act into law, ethical buying will no longer be a personal choice for Californians.
Okay. Great.
I know that this is not like a very local San Francisco, but like it's in terms of California, right? So I thought that that's quite essential.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my question was about, for example, when I quote the brands like The Body Shop, Too Faced, Lush Cosmetics, should I put them into the quotes or?
No, we don't do that in broadcast writing, just because that's not considered as helping the reader. So, you know, ultimately you're writing this as a script to be read. So quotation marks don't
help them.
Yeah, they don't help. So you would count on the anchor who's doing the reader to basically pick that up, right? So, yeah.
Then my second question was about what parts should I indent, I guess, because once I was going through the example that you showed us, the first article was just, the first paragraph was not intended, but the rest of them were intended.
Yes.
Is it freestyle or is there a rule?
It all depends on the news organization itself that does it. My understanding is that at NPR, that's the way it looks. So the first one is flush and the rest are indented. But it would depend on each organization, how they actually, you know, lay it out. You're following our format to the letter. Yeah, definitely. So there are, let's see, a number of things here. So last Tuesday, the state legislature passed a bill to make the sale of animal-tested cosmetics illegal within the state after 2020. Can't argue with that. That's a great summary lead. According to Glamour magazine, so there's the attribution, just like we want, the practice has long been a hot-button issue, but recently more brands like The Body Shop, Too Faced, and Lush Cosmetics have been vocal about taking a stand against it. So perhaps this I would have simplified a little bit, made more have spoken out against it instead of have been vocal in taking a stand against it. The included cosmetics umbrella. So that kind of lost me. The included cosmetics umbrella. What is the cosmetics umbrella?
What it is? It's makeup, it's shampoo, so everything that we put on ourselves. I assume that not all the listeners will know what it is. So to explain them.
Absolutely. So perhaps, the cosmetics covered under this ruling or something are makeup, deodorant, shampoo, and conditioner. That's all. I was just lost by the included cosmetics umbrella. That's all. By umbrella, you mean this covers? Yeah, this is included in the ban, or are products like makeup, deodorant, shampoo, and conditioner. So that confused me a little bit. I don't know. Did other people? Maybe it's just me. I'm not sure. So you guys think about it. If Governor Jerry Brown signs an act into law, ethical buying will no longer be a personal choice for Californians. So that, to me, packs a whole lot into your last sentence, in the sense that I think what it's doing is it's saying that, it's doing exactly what it says, which is it's pointing out that something that previously was a personal choice will now be legislated. To me, that opens up a larger controversy or question about whether we should be legislating ethical choices or not on behalf of other people. So I would either leave that issue out, or if I had more time, I would want to explore it more. It's kind of like leading people through something and then at the last minute or at the very end, throwing open a door to a new thing, which is a very important thing to some people. So I'm not sure if you'd want to go there or not. I personally would, in a 30-second piece, I wouldn't go there.
Okay, just facts.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't go there if you had another 30 seconds to have comment on that. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Here's a question I have.
Yeah.
It's not something that's wrong, obviously, but the last Tuesday, do you want that to be like, because it's saying like last Tuesday was probably like literally last Tuesday, but if the person who's reading it doesn't know, might not be picking up on the date of last Tuesday. So is it better to actually have the date, or is it better to just say?
It's a good point. Usually we stop at yesterday. Beyond that, we'll give a date in broadcast style. So if this was on Wednesday, you'd be good saying yesterday. Otherwise you'd date it. Yeah, it's a good point. However, in broadcast writing, we do write, with yesterdays, todays, and stuff. We don't date everything. Given that, in fact, one of my students at San Francisco State did an internship at KGO, and his job at the time was to go through all the stories and remove any timestamps so that they could go in a kind of an archive that could be used within 1 or 2 days later. So they actually are.
They took out all the time.
They took out the time. That was his job, was to go through all of it. So it would be broadcast once, let's say in the evening news, and then he'd go through all of it and take it out so that it could be used the next day. And using it the next day, you'd say, well, it's not dated. How do they handle that? The anchor's introduction would put a date on it. It would be like, more on the state legislature vote of last Tuesday, or to actually date it appropriately. So that's how they do it, actually, to make this reusable. Yeah, that was a really good story. Yeah, and it's again, it's probably tempting to put in all the angles on it, but that might be just too big a thing to pick up. Okay, let me just. Does anyone else? Oh, Fran, you wanted to go. Can I bring the mic back to you, Fran?
That's back.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. And, you need to hit the power button, Fran. I think you'll see which one it is. And folks, the one thing that's not happening, which usually happens in this discussion, is that other people feel free to ask questions of the writer, or say, how about this, or whatever. I think everybody here is taking it, this isn't criticism, this is more ideas about your work. So it could come from everybody. Let's put it that way. And we're all news consumers. Like, I don't have extra insight that you guys don't have. You've heard news stories before. Fran, did you find the power button? It should be glowing green. Is it glowing green? So the button on the left, which has a little circle on it, try pushing that in. Got it?
Got it.
Awesome. Okay. So now,
The reader?
pardon me?
The reader?
The reader? Okay. Oh, so you use Carol Summers as your reporter?
I did.
She's great. I highly recommend her. All right, here we are. Go for it.
Protesters set fire to Iran consulate. Angry protesters stormed the Iranian consulate in the southern city of Basra Friday, setting a fire inside as part of ongoing demonstrations that have turned deadly in the past few days, a security officer and eyewitness said. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, at least 10 protesters died in clashes with security forces. Protesters were shouting anti-Iranian slogans before setting the fire. The violence prompted the temporary head of Iraq's parliament to call an emergency meeting to discuss the snowballing protests.
Wow, okay.
So after I turned it in, I realized the typos that I made, and so I read the corrections, but they're not up.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. So that's always, good for us to see. We want to check that copy before it gets pushed to the teleprompter or whatever, and the big money anchors complain about us. Yeah. Cool. Let's see. I was wondering where Basra was, and down here I got the context, so I'm probably not your target audience because they would probably know that. Let's see. Angry protesters stormed the Iranian consulate in southern city of Basra, Iraq, Friday, setting a fire inside as part of ongoing demonstrations that have turned deadly in the past few days, a security officer and eyewitness said. I think you got to break that into 2 sentences somewhere. It's a perfect sentence for print, but your anchor will be running out of breath somewhere in there. So, I think you'd probably, in Basra, Iraq on Friday. So angry protesters stormed the Iranian consulate and set a fire inside of the consulate in the southern city of Basra, Iraq on Friday. Demonstrations have been going on that turned deadly in the past few days. Okay, and this is great. Attribution in there, attribution here. Yeah, your correction here was interesting. Protesters were shouting anti-Iranian slogans just before they set the fire. So I like the use of the shouting there instead of shouted, the past tense. I guess we talked about that, but we haven't really reiterated that in comments today. How, broadcast writing always tries to sound present tense, even if it's something that happened in the past. That formula really helps to do that. The violence prompted the temporary head of Iraq's parliament to call an emergency meeting to discuss the snowballing protests. Yeah. So, sounds good to me. Comments for Fran as you read it? Did everyone else know where Basra was? Nobody was like, what? Where's Basra? Oh, okay. Did that bug you, or it just flew by? It was no problem.
I thought it's like it's in the Middle East somewhere, and they're talking about Iran, so. Yeah, but I didn't know exactly where though.
Yeah. I was wondering, but I don't know. I guess we would immediately think it's in the Middle East. So maybe it's just me.
Also, for me, confusion was Iran, Iraq, and those 2 countries are usually mixed accidentally. It happens quite often.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, then something is wrong. But then, if you connect the first sentence and the last sentence, it makes sense then.
Yes. Yeah. So by the time we hear about Iraq's parliament, then we know we've got it situated. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's in terms of background, there's a complex situation there happening, right? I mean, with the U.S. overturning the Saddam Hussein government, that put the Sunnis out of power, right? And now they've struggled for a decade afterwards to sort of establish some kind of representative government that has legitimacy. You've got the Shia Muslims, you've got the Sunni Muslims, you've got the Kurds, all three of them very powerful players in Iraq. And so Iran is also a Shia Muslim country, and so they heavily support the Shia Muslims of Iraq because they want to have influence there, and I guess that's what the part of that's the context that I know about, that I guess is relevant here.
So I have a question. For the first paragraph, I feel like it's a pretty good paragraph. How would you break it up? Because you told her to break it up.
Yeah, it just seems too long to me.
How would you do that? Because it's, like I said, it's a pretty good paragraph.
Well, I'd say, yeah, so I'd say perhaps let's make the first part of it the most proximate, the most recent thing. So, angry protesters storming the consulates and set a fire in it. Let's make the second part of it the context that these demonstrations have been ongoing and it's just escalated. Let's put it, I guess that would be my first instinct as to how to break it up. But it's a bit of a challenge to write that out, but I think so. That's what I would try to do, I think, in breaking it up. Let's see, what else could you do? I mean, in a reader, I think that's probably what I would recommend. And the other option is just to edit it down so that try to extract a half dozen words or so that it comes into the I had a teacher who said no sentence is longer than 11 words. That was just like that was the rule. So when we wrote, if you had more than 11 words, you'd find a way to get rid of it. Sometimes I think we're on our way to keeping those sentences pretty short. So, but I.
At work, or did that cause a problem?
I found it a little mechanical, in a sense that we all wrote to 11 words, and so we'd have a lot of 11-word sentences. And one of the things you'll find when you're doing your profiles or longer pieces, if all the sentences are the same length, it starts to have a rhythm, and then the rhythm calls attention to itself, and you're not actually listening to the news item. So perversely, by saying keep it all to this limit, it introduced this weird kind of rhythm. I think a little bit of longer, a little bit of shorter is good. Like I like the way that this contrasts with the next one. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, at least 10 protesters died in clashes with security forces. That is a nice, comfortable broadcast length sentence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So more than 11, and it's cool, so that's my feeling. Let's say maybe at 15 to 18, you start running out of things. Okay, Fran, thank you. That was awesome. And again, none of this is given in the spirit of criticism. I mean, it's good work to share, and also it's effective to see what other people have done because you learn from that. Does anyone else want to share one? There's another thing that I would bring up, and I'll ask you all again if you want to share one. Maybe I should check chat as well. So in broadcasting, numbers under 11, we actually spell them out. So that should be written as TEN, 10, okay? And so it's odd, but that's the rule. Now, if you want a whole ton more rules, which are really kind of, they're professional, but they're tedious. But I don't mean to say that they're to be disregarded. They're not. They're just maybe not something that we want to go through in its entirety today. I prefer, I just think it's less tedious teaching if we bring them up as we get to it. So in the modules for today, I've included this excerpt from the Associated Press Stylebook, which has the main rules for broadcast that they follow. And remember, every media organization has its own style book, whether it's a website or a radio station. But by default, they often follow the AP style book. And if they don't have any practices of their own, we just default to AP. So there's all kinds of rules in here about how you should handle things like abbreviations, company names, stuff like that. And so we can get to them eventually.
Do they have an online version of this?
It is, as I said, when I say that something's in the modules, that means that it is online for you to find. Yeah. So there's something about addresses, but where's the rule about numbers that we've been just talking about? So broadcast, capitalized numbers that are spelled out, and you're spelling out numbers under 11. Where are they there? I don't know. It's in here somewhere. So
For broadcast.
I'm looking for the basic rule, which I would assume comes up before this. Numbers, addresses. Where are we here?
It's section 4.
Oh, thank you. Head down to section 4, numerals. Spell out whole numbers below 10. Use figures for 10 above, but for broadcast, oddly enough, spell out 1 through 11. Use numerals for 12 through 999. For numbers above 999, use words or combinations of numerals and words. So, like, look at how they've written 12,000 homes, for instance. That would be the way to handle that. So, it's a strange but respected rule. That's the way we handle numbers. Okay? So this kind of stuff, you just get used to doing it over time. But again, if we had a lot of time and maybe you were in a journalism school where you had several classes about copy editing and stuff like that, you might have actual exercises or like stuff to correct where all of these rules would come into play. So they're important. But in this introductory class, I like to focus in on maybe issues of content and reporting and accuracy rather than following the style book. But there it is. So as you can see, this is 11 pages long. It has a lot of rules. And for those of you who have done this in print journalism classes, it gives you the broadcast version of those rules and stuff. So, other stuff to pay attention to, in your upcoming work. Again, I wouldn't take points off for this because we're all just learning about it. But, when you're dealing with companies and writing it in, use the informal constructions rather than formal companies' names. So, my friend who works for, Google.com or something like that, you can leave that off. You just call it Google. So use the informal versions of these organizations. Here's another one. So organizations that are usually identified by their initials, you will write them out in the script, like FBI, CIA, or stuff like that. But if it is an organization which is not commonly identified with its initials or something like that, and we often say, Jane got a job with CCSF last semester. Not everybody's going to know what CCSF is, right? So you're going to say Jane got a job with City College of San Francisco last semester. And then in your subsequent mentions of the college, instead of saying CCSF, say the college. Or something like that, instead of saying CCSF and then having to hope that your audience understands that CCSF is City College of San Francisco,
After you say City College of San Francisco, can you just put CCSS?
I don't think so. No. Again, if you're writing for students, they would commonly know that. Otherwise, if you're writing for broadcast for, let's say, the greater San Francisco area, yeah, okay. But after that, I think, again, it's preferable rather than going to, like initialize something yourself, find another way of the college or the board or the, instead of, so that you avoid repetition, but you don't also introduce potentially confusing acronyms. That would be it. But again, if you're reporting or on the CIA, everybody's used to that. They understand the organization is the CIA, but put little dashes between the letters in your script so that people understand that they read CIA and whatever. So those are common ones that usually come up very early on in the semester, and then there's a bunch of other ones, obviously, that as they come up, I might just mention them and say, okay, check out the style guide. So that is in this week's resources. So this is it. The Associated Press Stylebook broadcast examples. There's a little PDF there. Very convenient because the actual AP style guide is thick like this. Well, everyone uses it in a online format now because it's just so easy to search out stuff. And again, you don't usually have time as a working journalist to consult this, so you use it as you go along, and it becomes second nature very quickly, as would the style guide for whatever organization you work for. They have their ways of doing stuff. Just to finish on this little discussion, but for KALW had an online editor named Olivia Henry, who graciously came a couple of times in the last couple of years. She's moved now out of the Bay Area, but she talked to us about how, for instance, KALW had to create an exact style for photo credits on their blog, for instance, something like that. So just the amount of energy that was dedicated to making everything consistent about the way the organization communicates. And of course, it was a good illustration of how an organization like that maintains its credibility by being really predictable, by having a style guide and making sure everybody follows it, and finding areas where they're sloppy and cleaning those up, so that they look really tight, really organized. And of course, what you're really trying to avoid is, God forbid, somebody doesn't attribute an image or misattributes it or something like that, and opens the organization up to some kind of lawsuit or something like that. You really don't want that.
It's fired.
Well, and worse, the whole organization suffers or something. So that would not be good. So let's. We'll be back next class, and first of all, I could quickly flash through some PowerPoints, or I could say, would anyone like to have their work read as the last thing?
How much time you got?
I got 4 minutes, which is definitely enough time for somebody to read, and I can also check chat because I'm always forgetting to see if anyone on chat would like to.
Yeah, you can put me up there if you want. I don't know.
Is that right? Okay,
Well,
cool.
I mean, do you have time? Whatever you want.
I'd love to. Okay. Amanda's saying you can read mine. I'm inclined to take someone from online,
Do it.
but we can find time next class. I will ask next class. All right. So let's look at Amanda's, and then next class we will open this up again, I guess. So Mission. Show and finding. Amanda can't read her own. Was it a reader or a rap? Let's look at a rap, just because we focused just on readers, right? Okay. So PBS premieres a new television show, The Great American Read, on September 11th, 2018. KCSF's Amanda Womack has the story. Okay, so here comes her reporting. According to the SF Chronicle, a new PBS program highlights American readers' top favorite novels as voted for online. The series Great American Read aims to not only entertain, but pushes for a movement in Americans to read and engage in a community of nationwide enthusiasts through interacting on social media and the website pbs.org. Great American Read features authors, actors, bookstore owners, and teachers, among other spotlights. Producer Jane Root has a passion for the project. Root: "It's about getting people to reveal their secret passions," Root says. "There's lots of great series about what makes a book amazing. There's lots of literary series. There's lots of places in our culture where people talk about how good books are. But there's not many places where people talk about actually the best loved element of it." Back to Womack. Great American Read is a weekly 8-part series culminating in the reveal of America's favorite book on October 23rd, 2018. This is Amanda Womack for KCSF. All right. Thank you, Amanda. I won't dip back into chat to ask, to give you a chance to talk to people. We got a minute or so left here. Let's see. Check out how the date would be formatted in the AP document that we were just looking at. These are all just minor suggestions and stuff. As I think I mentioned to William, I would save the attribution for, bring it in a later paragraph, just so that you can save the lead for yourself. Where's the wrap? I thought the anchor's introduction was terrific. I think the formatting is all correct. The use of square brackets around your name and around the act. So root should actually be written ACT, root, just to draw attention to this is an actuality. This is what somebody's saying. In the wrap, as we said, we're using sentence case to identify the actualities. This actuality, I think, is a little long. So what I would say is go into any actuality. It has a number of reasons for being there. It may factually advance your story. It may also give a sense of personality or uniqueness to who's talking. So you're going through your actuality looking for, okay, what is the part of this actuality that has the most factual impact and emotional impact, if you want.
I was going to say, if she cut it down, she'd probably just use the last sentence.
Yeah, I would think so too. It kind of combines both. That's what I was thinking as well. And of course, we don't use quotation marks in broadcast writing. But this is a highly weird aspect of what we're doing. Usually broadcast writers, they have tape. They're not going around excising quotes from stories, right? They've been there as a reporter and talked to Root and recorded what she said, and they go back and they find this little cut here. So of course you wouldn't have Root says in there or those quotation marks or something like that. Otherwise, I'd say just take one more read to simplify a little bit the sentence structures and the way you're saying things, but
also she might want to read it out loud to see how much time it's taking, because it's supposed to be 45 seconds.
Took a little longer.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
So. I think it's like a minute.
I think already cutting this out of the actuality would help.
A lot closer, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like the way you set this up. Producer Jane Root has a passion for the project, so you always want to identify who's going to talk. But you also don't want to duplicate anything. You don't want to say, Jane Root says that it's going to be really exciting, and then have the first thing that she says is, it's really exciting. So this is nice. Yeah, there's no duplication there. So it's a very nice setup there. So Cool. Okay. Well, we ran a few minutes over time, but I'm glad we looked at a wrap. So please, I'll ask next class if you want us to read yours as well. I find this is the most fun and useful part of after an assignment to get over. So thanks for sharing, everyone who did, and we'll see you next time.